talking to me. There we go. Okay. And you don't have to worry about admitting people. I will do that too, Dave.
Well,
Um,
sit here. I'm okay.
oh, yeah. All right. Well, so before I begin talking, because I do that a lot anyway, who has questions or who has um, issues about the two major topics, which is all about kids, just uh, children, Brit Milah, baby namings, um, children issues, raising kids Jewishly, and then the second issue, B'nai Mitzvah or Bar Bat Mitzvah, or today they use the term B Mitzvah. Um, who has just so I'm going to do a little Socratic stuff. Um, there we go. We got JT and DT. Um, that's all I know. All right. Who would like to go and share, debate, ask a question to get us into it? If not, I'll just jump in. I thought maybe Christina would. I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot. Debbie, do you or
I have my understanding when you're naming.
put your cameras on, folks, so we can have a little camaraderie, if you don't mind.
No,
All right.
I don't do
You're in,
cameras.
you're in
Uh,
your bathrobe. Okay. Go ahead.
um, my understanding is when you're naming your children, um you shouldn't use the name of a living relative.
Yeah, that's
Is
one
that
thing I'm talking
correct?
about. Yes. Yes. Well, I'm going to talk about that and how it's evolved over time. Okay, Christina, how do you yeah, yes, Debbie, but that's going to be definitely something I'm going to discuss. How do you navigate co-parenting with someone non-religious who prefers not to push religion on the child? That's a private question. It's not private, but I mean, um, a lot of people have that issue, and um, maybe you and me and your husband is Omar, right? She tends to talk on the text. I think we should meet together, the three of us, and talk about that issue. But in general, what I say to people is, first of all, I don't push religion. We live in a state where people think, and have you been listening to what I've been saying in the, no, oh, it's X. No, wait a minute. Oh, I'm thinking of another person. Okay. Uh, oh, so you got to deal with an X. Um, forgive me, Christina. I'm sorry. I was thinking of Jessica and Omar. Okay. Well, if I see your camera more often, then I wouldn't get so confused. The general thing that I would say with anybody, families, and this is not, Debbie's dealing with grandchildren or great grandchildren. Dave's children are having their own children. Um, I try to put it this way to families. Um, it's not like Catholic rituals where you're not a Jew if you don't have a Jewish baby naming, you don't have a Brit Milah, you don't have a bar bat mitzvah. It is part of our tradition, it's part of our rituals, and um, what you can say to somebody, an ex or a fellow um, a spouse um, partner is, the kids got to have an identity. It helps that they have something that they relate to, um, and that the earlier you start, the more comfortable it is for them. It doesn't feel like you're pushing religion to a kid if you just say, "Hey, what'd you do in Sunday school today?" In religious school, oh, we made dreidels, we did this fun stuff. It seems like I'm hearing that more in this area than I did in other areas, and also perhaps times have changed. So, it is important, and this is a lot of parents talk about this. A lot of parents realize that a kid would come home from school and say, "Gee, mommy, the kids in school were talking about Christmas. What do we celebrate?" Or, um, the kids in school told me I was Jewish and that I'm going to go to hell if I don't believe in Jesus. What do I say? So, a good, and I would say liberal, a good religious school will address this. They have intermarried families, interracial families, um, kids with gender issues as well sometimes. Um, it's just fun to be Jewish. I don't have an easy answer. The answer will be different for each person or family. Sometimes, even when you're married to somebody, my sister, who's now with a guy, but this um, her second husband was Jewish, and they're divorced, and he was very Jewish. Grew up in St. Louis, and you'd think he would have really been. He was the executive director of the synagogue. I'm not saying anything; it's too gossipy, mind you. And all three kids had a B'nai Mitzvah and even confirmation went through the whole thing, went to summer camps. None of them are currently involved with Jewish spouses or partners, and none of them really relate that much to religious Judaism. Culturally, yes. So, what I want to talk about tonight is simply what do you do at these events to make it fun for everybody, um, and as part of the life cycle. Now, I want to suggest that everybody get a copy of Judaism for Dummies if they have handy, so we can look at some of their stuff, at some of his stuff, and it is. It may not be different page numbers. Okay, hit record. Dave, you hit record. Okay, from womb to tomb, the life cycle. So today we're going to do chapter 6, birth and bris, and chapter 7, coming of age, the B'nai Mitzvah. Now that's on pages 87 through 90 through 102. There's also plenty of material in Joe Telushkin's book, but I'm just going to use this one. All right, so this is, like I said, this is a little lighter than Kabbalah.
Hey, Rabbi, I have a suggestion. If someone tells your children or grandchildren, whatever, you go to hell if you don't, worship or believe in Jesus, tell them that they're mistaken, that you go right to the big man, that you don't have to go through any intermediary. You can just go right to God.
Right. Yeah. That works for me, and it's a really great idea. By the way, here is in Lech's book, it's part 4 from the cradle for the grave to the grave. So Ted Falcon calls it from womb to tomb. Lech calls it from cradle to grave. Mazel tov, it's a boy or girl. Okay, so but I think that Christina raises an important point, is that even before the kid is born, or while you're going out with somebody, you can't put the horse back in the barn. But it's important, I think, while you're in a relationship with somebody, that it becomes, why am I looking at Debbie's speaker thing? I want to get me back to be speaker. View gallery. Let's just do gallery. Okay. So if you want to open it up so you can see me, and it doesn't matter because in a minute I'm going to put the PowerPoint on. Here we go. Kids, PowerPoint. Okay. All right. So the title of this is Raising a Mensch. Raising a Mensch. What's a mensch? Anybody? Yiddish word.
It's a gentleman.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it means man. It is the German word is Mann. Mensch is also male, but it's not really. It means a good person, raising a person with consciousness and ethics and so on. These are some of the traits. Wait, did I hit share? I did not hit share yet. Let me hit that up. Get that going here. Share. Oh, Oh, shoot. Dave, would you make me the co-host? Thank you. That's why. I'm glad you're still there. So now I can share. Okay. All right. And multiple people can share. Okay, here we go. I forgot to ask you to do that. So, there is a phrase, a word in Hebrew, for traits, and it's another topic we'll do sometime, maybe on another class, called midot. Midot means like ideals of what you'd like a person to be. You'd like your child to, let's go down instead of ambition, let's say, to be courteous, to be creative, to be curious. So all these are the things that we ask that we want to have cultivated in a child: integrity, intelligence, kindness, self-discipline, respect, obedience. But you know what? Jews don't, we say obedience, but we don't say, oh, I want a kid that's obedient to his mom and dad. But we want a child that if you set it early enough, not just, I'm not only talking about the naming ceremony, but in general, so none of you are at that stage where you're um, courting anybody. But often I teach this class to individuals that are marrying soon, or so that's how this was developed. So we want to sit down with our potential partner and say, I want to have the child. And now you'll see this in the naming ceremonies. There's a great reading called "Build Us a Daughter, the Son," or "Build Us a Daughter, Build Us a Child." Okay, so um, I want to talk about the bris first, and I also, let's see, is it in here? Yes, it's covered in here. Um, no, it is not covered in this one. It is covered in another, um, it is covered in another slide. Um, Brit Milah is, um, is a very important ritual, so important for a male child that if we go back to the Hanukkah stories, you remember, women um, were the ones who did the Brit Milah. And I'm sorry, I'm going to stop the share for just a second. So I'm going to put the other one up too. That's the, um, yes, thank you, Christina. Very good person. So I'll sometimes say that to, like my gardener's a very good Christian guy, and I'll sometimes, when he came over, now it's wintertime, I said his name is Howard. I said, Howard, you're a mensch. And then my landlord also is a very good man. So a mensch, even though it sounds like a weird word, it means, a good person. Un buen hombre, as they say in Spanish. Okay, let me open the kids one as well. And this is the kids pro PDF one. Click to open. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yes, it has this also, but it also covers, there it is. No, it doesn't. This particular one does not. Okay. Anyway, I want to talk about why the Brit Milah is so important. And it's maybe that's not controversial to this group. And you guys, who are converting, Rick, Devin, you also have to go through this. It's a little bit personal to talk about one's member. What we know about ancient rites of circumcision is that, well, we know the Bible, the Torah says Abraham is told by God, circumcise yourself and your son. He circumcises Ishmael as well, and later on, after Isaac is born. So there is material that suggests that it was a rite of not cleanliness as much as to kind of uncover that which is covered, to give something back to God. Also, and this is going to get a little psychological, not gross, but women bleed. women have menstrual fluids, and so the daughter does not need to do this. But so I think this is really ancient. This is not even pre-Judaism. I think that what happened is it became a part of the ritual, part of the symbolism of the Brit Milah was to show the child spiritually, you're going to have a little bit of pain, and then you'll be okay. So that's one. Number two, it was done in African tribes at an older age. It was done at age 13. Well, that's really painful. So what the Jewish or the Hebrews did in the Torah was bring it back to a place where it would not be painful. So that's the first thing I want to do. And I also want to point out that there are people today, mostly in the Bay Area, some in Philly, that have come up with an alternative to the Brit Milah. They oppose the circumcision. And so these people have a ceremony that they've come up with that is considered to be, a Jewish ceremony. And I know that I'm going to confront this in my next congregation. I would not be surprised if I have people who oppose it. So that's why I'm going through the why. One, just like everything else with Torah, God said so, right? The Torah tells us. We do it because the Torah tells us. Two, we give a sense of covenant, right? That we're covenanting this child to this boy, to God through, and what is it? What if the foreskin is a tiny little piece? It's better than that than the nose or piece of the ear or something. So you give back to God. It may be that it was a ceremony that was left over from the time of the pagans, where they would actually pick up their children and pass through fire with them. So there's a bit of a challenge to it. Number three is, I don't want to refer to something I have here. I didn't send this to you guys. Number three is that the word is Milah, means circumcision, but Brit means covenant. So the idea of let me see if I have something here I wanted to read to you. Um, no, I'll show you in a minute one of the programs that I have for a baby naming. Um, uh, Throughout your generations, every male among you shall be circumcised when he is 8 days old. Now, there may come a time when the circumcision will perhaps go the way of other traditions, but one of the reasons that it's also done is because of the persecution that they suffered during the time of King Ahasuerus, King Antiochus, excuse me, in the Maccabean period. So, as I said before, women were the ones who actually did it. So the ritual before, now today we have professional male mohalim. Mohel is a circumcised guy, a guy who used it. So we're going to get into the how it's done. And
Hey,
the last,
Rabbi.
yes, sir.
Sorry, I had my hand up and it disappeared.
Oh, okay.
Just real quick, you touch. Why was that part specifically chosen to have that done to? Out of all the other parts that males have, why that? Make any sense to me?
That's what I'm attempting to answer. It may be that it was also the penis was looked at as a generativity, a place of giving, right? And yet it was covered. So by uncovering it, you're surrendering, you're giving something to show I'm vulnerable. I mean, this is all psychology. So it is done in Arab societies, Jewish societies, and now then what happened over time is it became an issue for persecution. Kids were made fun of in the Hasmonean period, the Greek period, and so it became hard and fast. Kind of, we got to do this because it's part of our tradition. Um, so now I'm going to talk about in a minute what some people have come up with for girls. Don't worry, there's nothing cut, but it's an interesting idea. Um, so it's one of those things that is so easy to do. It is not so horrible that it can't be done. Now, in our own community, I'm not saying this to be too personal. Noam and Abby's not Jewish, but they decided that Aviv would be circumcised, and it was done. They had you can have a mohel, a circumciser, drive up from Denver in this case, or many doctors are able to do it. So uh, Josh and Mary, who are not on this cycle, they came last year. Josh and Mary had the circumcision done at the hospital, and because the insurance would cover that, they wouldn't cover it later. And I went to the hospital and I did the ritual part of the service, and the doctor who performed the circumcision did a great job. So the best thing I can tell you is that we do these things because they're traditions, and as I said, the Torah doesn't tell us why, but psychologically, I think that it's a covenant of giving back, of covenant of uncovering that which is covered, and also a covenant of identity, you know. So it's a mark it's something very, very personal to give to God. So over the centuries, as I said, Jews suffered or fought for this right. They made sure that the boy was circumcised. Now, what I'm going to get to is in the 20th century, they began to do research. This is like kashrut. Kashrut was not developed because of the idea of a pig was not clean, but they discovered that boys or men who were circumcised had less incidence of cancer of the area because it was clean, it was kept clean. So there may be that element, but that's what's interesting. So then the doctors, when my parents were, young men and women, doctors began circumcisions in the hospital. So that's why circumcision is now done in many hospitals. That never happened as much in Europe. So you encounter guys from Europe and South America that are not circumcised. Um, so I don't want to dwell on this too long, except to tell you that it's the actual circumcision ceremony or the actual doing of it is very short. Dave's on, I guess, because he's thinking about his own grandchildren. Um, so here we go. Let's look at the ceremony, and but let me just first let me finish the slide. The kids. Okay. Yeah. So I gotta go back to screen share. Will this work? Screen share. Um, okay. Every time I screen share, I gotta go down to the bottom again. All right, so it is really cool. There are several players in this ceremony, and we're gonna get to the bot in a minute. Bot is girl. So circumcision is on the eighth day. Why the eighth day, you might ask? Why not the first day or the second day? It's interesting because the hospitals say, okay, your insurance will cover it if you do it while mommy's in the hospital downstairs. So I'm not a doctor, but I think there is evidence that doing it on the eighth day, psychologically and physically, the boy's healing reflexes are more developed, number one. Number two, they're psychologically at least bonded to the mother, and it's not a scary ceremony. Also, number three, a Brit Milah done in the home or in the synagogue or social hall is clean, very, very clean. This is the name of the person, Mohel. Mohel. And if I have time, I'll tell you what in Yiddish they say a moil. And if you want me to, I'll tell a moil joke. They're in moderately good taste. Okay. But anyway, the mohel is a person, a man who is specifically trained to perform the circumcision. Often back in Europe, it was the butcher, because butchers had good knives and they knew it out, so they didn't have doctors that would come around. So the mohel. So the the child, the boy, is carried into the room and put on the lap of this person called Sandek. Actually, no, the Sandek is Sandek, but Sandek is godfather in Yiddish. The Sandek is often can be a woman. They carry the child into the room, and there's like this they're really performing the role of friend of the family. Then the kvater can be the same person. Kvater, it means a person who holds the baby on their lap. But today, that's what I was going to get to. Today, most of all the mohalim I know, they put the baby in on a platform. Now, this is the difference. In the hospital circumcisions, they strap the kid with straps to this platform so that the kid is exposed and also unable to do anything. Whereas the traditional mohel does not need the straps. They just open the kid and they know what they're doing. This chair of Elijah is also the seat in which the Sandek sits, kind of like Elijah is, and this is an example of one from the Middle Ages. So Elijah is considered to be present at the Brit Milah. Okay, so
Rabbi, I have a question.
uh-huh.
Didn't we in the Torah study talk about why they waited for the days? Because so many babies died
That's
earlier,
another reason. Yes, that
and
is
so they
another reason.
waited to see that that there was a little bit of of strength in the baby.
Correct. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So because back in, I mean, I think today it's considered tradition, but I'm giving you psychologically and medically a reason why 8 is better than 1 or 2. But there was another reason that you're citing, very important, is that children, babies, were often struggling, and they wanted to make sure the child was going to live. So 8 days. This is halakha here we're talking about. An 8-day-old child is considered able to live, sustain itself, even though they're still nursing. So that's the tradition. Okay. Now, I want you to also read in Joe Telushkin's book the section on circumcision, a whole section on life cycle. Here's what Joe Telushkin wrote. Aside from newborn boys, the only other people requiring circumcision are male converts to Judaism. In the United States, where most non-Jews are already circumcised, this requirement is fulfilled by taking a symbolic drop of blood from the penis. So isn't that nice? If you're already circumcised, as almost everybody I know here in town is, you don't have to go and get it. My student in LA, Herbert, is from El Salvador, and he is so committed to this that he's going to get a circumcision done by a doctor, by a urologist. It may or may not be covered by insurance. So now this is up to bar mitzvah. So I want to see if I can switch over to the other um, slide here. And I want to show you some examples of baby naming ceremonies that are lovely. But at first, I want to talk about girls too. Okay. So when you get invited, this is from the material. This is from a PDF. When you get invited to a Brit Milah, it's going to be either at the synagogue or it might be at the home. Aviv had his ceremony at, I believe it was at Noam's and Abby's house. But then we had the baby naming ceremony for Talia, the girl, at Stephen Carroll's house. Okay, let's see if I can get this a little smaller. Okay, so if you get invited to the Brit Milah or the girl baby naming ceremony for the girl, um, come just like you would come for anything else. Oh, here is here is an article by Andrew Spall, who is the guy I recommend in LA. His father, Bob Spall, was the Moel that did a lot of the baby stuff that when I was in. Look how young Andrew looks. But so Andrew's now in his late 40s, early 50s. And he wrote, how did you become a mohel? Are there any benefits? So read this on your own. Um, so what I want to tell you, though, is the reform movement in the old days was, there was ambivalence. There still is, as I said, some people are still ambivalent. The reform movement was so committed to Brit Milah that what they began doing to make people more comfortable, I got to be honest with you, my parents told me that the mohel that they hired, this is 1953. I was a kid. I mean, I was a baby. And all they had available were, the old timers, probably smoked or, very, very pious religious people. And it was not something my parents really felt. They felt it had to be done, but they didn't enjoy the ceremony very much. Today, a lot of people have put a lot of energy into making the ceremony meaningful. And so what the reform movement did was they started seeking out, finding urologists, trained people who know what to do, with infection and so on. And so that's how Bob, Andrew's father, got into this. Now, it's done by men, right? Well, guess what? There is also mohalot, mohalim, im ending is masculine, ot is feminine. So one of my best experiences in LA, in Long Beach, and I met this woman a couple of years ago. I saw her. I said, "How's everything?" The kid was already 13 or whatever, but it was a couple. It was a lesbian couple, and they had a boy and they had another boy. I mean, it's none of my business how they had the child, but the they wanted to have a woman perform the circumcision. So they hired a mohelet feminine, and she came out to the house and she did the circumcision, and it was a beautiful ceremony. I did the naming parts, and we'll talk about names as well in a minute. But first we're going to talk about the girls. But so this is a beautiful story because the older boy was like three, maybe, yeah, 3 or 4 years old, and he goes over to the baby before the ceremony and he says, do you remember heaven? I want to tell me about heaven because I forgot. Isn't that incredible? Isn't that beautiful? The kid said the sense of that's what, babies know things. There is a lot of people who talk about that babies know things before they're born. There's even a story of a Yiddish story about, that we all have this little, my mustache hides this, we all have this little indentation here. I'm sorry to give a digression, but it's a beautiful story. So the angel that brings, like it wasn't a stork, it's an angel that brings the child to earth, not literally, but So in this story, this angel had a little too much to drink, and instead of supposed to like tap the kid on the nose, but instead of tapping it, he hits the kid on the nose, and the kid comes to as a baby and knows everything. Can tell, and he's like this baby is talking about heaven. So not baby like when he's 2 years old, he's able to remember everything because what's happened is supposed to happen is the angel's supposed to pop you on the nose and you forget everything. Isn't that mystical? That you know what's happening in heaven, but we forget when we're born. Okay, so I started to say, when you're invited to a Brit Milah, go. It is fun. It is enjoyable. Here it is. A new life means infinite possibility. Um, a Brit Milah or Simchat Bat, we'll talk about the girls in a minute, um, is done in the home or the synagogue. If it is a more traditional couple, it'll be in the synagogue or the home, but go and expect it to be the same amount of time, 30 minutes. But afterwards, say people eat. It's nosh time. It's always, and so the baby is brought into the room by the parents or specially honored friends or relatives, and everybody says Baruch haba. The baby is held on the lap of the sandek. That's what I was saying. But the actual procedure is conducted by the mohel. Today, as I said, they just say, "Hey, you bring the kid to the table," um, and yes, they do put the child on a little um, whatever you want to call it, a blanket on the table or a tray, and then right away that the baby is wrapped in a talit or some kind of a swaddling cloth and brought immediately to the mother to nurse so that he feels a sense of comfort immediately. Okay, now, and I have a couple of ceremonies to share with you. So I'll go off share for just a moment. When about, I would say about 30 years ago, uh, everybody had naming ceremonies. So you would have the Brit Milah, the bris. By the way, in case you don't know, Sam will tell you. Um, the T letter in Hebrew is T, but in Ashkenazi communities it can be S. So that's why you hear bris, right, and Shabbos instead of Shabbat. So bris is Brit Milah, not brisket. It's not brisket because you eat brisket. All right, so the bris or the Brit Milah is done for the boys. All right, we got that. Now, what'll also happen sometimes for boys or girls, the couple will bring the baby to the synagogue for Shabbat morning, and they'll have an aliyah. We're going to talk about aliyah in a minute because of the importance of the bar bat mitzvah. So everything happens around the synagogue. So in the service in the synagogue, they bring the child up on the bima, and that's when they would sometimes do the naming. So that was what was done for girls. So the boys got the Brit Milah at the home, the girls got the naming ceremony. It was lovely. Well, not only feminists, but in general, women, men began to say, you know what, there should be something meaningful for the girls. So some of the Jewish novel communities I know, women rabbis, started an idea. What do girls identify? What is part of the ritual for girls? Mikvah. So they said, let's dip the girl's finger or toe into water. Now, we didn't want to do a whole immersion like a tub because that looks too much like, you know what, it looks like the Catholic rituals. So some of the ceremonies in the early, like the 90s, they would do this thing with bringing water. Other ones have done it with a candle, a lighting of a candle. But in a minute, we'll share both ceremonies, the boys and the girls. So I use the same readings for boys and girls, these beautiful readings that I will share with you. But I want to talk next about names, but let's finish the slide. So this is a Simchat Bat prayer. I'd have to go back to the screen share. And we live in a time, as I said, the couple that I worked with in Long Beach, two women, we're working at a time when women, men, couples, same-sex couples have the same ceremonies. Like the question Christina asked is an important one, because what if one person says yes, another person says no? At least do the naming ceremony. The question is not whether you're going to have a Brit Milah or a girl baby naming ceremony, but whether you're going to raise the kid at all as a Jew. So that's something it's important to talk about while you're still going out. Anyway, here are some. It's like that Bob Dylan song, May God bless and keep you always. So there's this beautiful idea of blessing the child with three things: Torah, Jewish learning, chuppah, and that means doesn't necessarily mean get married to a person of the opposite sex, but love. May you have love. May you have learning, love, and gemilut chasadim, doing righteous acts. So those three things are in this ceremony that they pick. I'll show you some other ones. Okay, so let me show you, and I sent these all to you too. These are very short. Um, I keep these from various ceremonies that I've done. This is from, come on, click to open. Click to open. There we go. Okay. So these are so long ago that you don't have to worry about it being like somebody in our community. But I think I still have the one from Aviv. I just didn't want to scan them. Okay, so Brit Chayim. This is a Brit Chayim. That was the word that we used for a ceremony for a girl. Incidentally, only a month earlier, um, let's see, what's her name? Joni and Neil. Joni had, oh shoot, it does that all the time. Let's see, bring it down. The size keeps going down. Joni went to the mikvah. Joni converted at the Academy for Jewish Religion in L.A. So she was pregnant. Boy, she's like, I think it was like not a month, maybe it's about 2 months, but she knew that she was going to give birth. So she wanted to be a Jew before the birth. And so these are some readings that I love. And Joanne was a member of my synagogue and Joni's best friend, Ariella, another member of our synagogue, and then aunts and uncles. So a new daughter of Israel has arrived, and with her comes great promise. In her soul is the potential to bring greatness into our world. She brings blessing to our lives. So the idea is that you're blessing the child. You don't know what's going to happen, but you bless them with everything that can happen. And often it's good to have aunts, uncles, grandparents have readings. And so Joni read, I wrote some of these myself. Joni read, Welcome, woman, child, newborn guardian of the sacred gift of cycles and seasons. All beautiful stuff. So we made the ceremony. I happen to have both of these. I'm going to show you our girls. I just don't have the boy ones, but it's the same basic readings. So, and then my sister also had several very beautiful ceremonies. I might have them on file. And so these readings have been around. May you be blessed with this. May you know good deeds. May you have. So the typical things that we do are blessing them with a life of, like I said, learning, love, and justice. Okay. Then typically for the girls and also for the boys, they light a candle. And so that was a whole blessing there. And we also had different, here's also grandparents. But here's a great reading. You know what? I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but God willing, Sam and Emily, I should have the honor of coming to town for your someday. But I always have the parents read, we have been blessed with the gift of life. We have shared love, pain, and joy in bringing our daughter into this world and have been privileged to participate in the marvel and beauty of creation. All right, so that's, may she bless it. So then it's not very long. Like I told you, it's just 15, 20 minutes, but by making it a little longer, people feel a sense of there's a ritual to it. So the two things for both the boys and the girls is the parents say, blessed are you. This is Ya Shechina. This was very my style then. Adonai Eloheinu. You can say Adonai. Blessed are you, Adonai, living spirit of all. This was to make it easier for people to read the English. Who, as we bring our daughter into the covenant, and everybody says, as she has been brought, remember that's what I said, right? As she's been brought into the covenant of our people, so may she be blessed with Torah, chuppah, and a life of righteous deeds. All right. And then the whole community, that was the name of my shul, Amor Olam. We, the community, and everybody is there, like as many of the members of the synagogue as you can have, to encircle them and be part of them. So then, both the boys and the girl one, they do the blessing on the wine and the shehechianu. Do you all know what shehechianu is by now? Yes? Okay, Sam's nodding his head. Shehechianu is the blessing that says, thank you, God, for sustaining us to be alive for this moment. And is when you say it at your immersion into the mikveh, you say it on the first day of any holiday, you say it on the first day of, let's say, Hanukkah. And my parents would always say it when my grandparents came from New York. Anytime you eat a fruit for the first time. So it's a beautiful blessing. So those are the three, blessing on the naming, blessing on the wine. It can be grape juice, don't worry, and the shehechianu. This is the reading I was taught. I'm going to talk about the naming in a minute. Um, um, this is a nice reading. Oh, build us a daughter that will be strong enough to know her weakness and brave enough to face her fears. One who will be proud in honest defeat, yet humble and gentle in victory. This was originally written for the boys, but it works great for the girls too. So grant them a sense of humor, humility. So it's a very beautiful thing. And then usually there is a priestly benediction, which I did here. Now, let's take a moment and talk about names. Okay, let's see, there's a message. Christina, what about the child of a convert who later wants the child of a convert? Could you explain that if a person converts to Judaism, then if a mother converts to Judaism, the child is automatically Jewish, period. Okay. So the naming ceremony is not for conversion. The naming ceremony is to be part of the Jewish people. All right. Now, what you might be getting at is, let's say, okay, if they were born prior to the mom's conversion. Okay, so in case of your kids, so what you do is, when okay, this gets the conversion. When when an adult converts, they come before the Beit Din. That's the rabbinical court, 3 men, 3 women, 3 rabbis, rabbi cantor, whatever, lay members of the synagogue in our case, and they declare their intention. The group interviews them, and they never say no, because they've already met them and know their story. But that is not necessary for the child under the age of 13. Again, 13 is the age of majority in the Jewish tradition. So I'm going to talk about bar mitzvah next. I'm going to watch the clock. We have enough time for that. So I'd say, even though she couldn't join us tonight, Taylor has little kids. And when Taylor does her conversion, which is going to be at the synagogue, we are also converting the kids. I hate the word conversion, by the way. So this is the sine qua non of becoming a Jew, is the Beit Din, the symbolic circumcision for a man, the drop of blood just with a little lancet needle for the man who is circumcised. The man who isn't circumcised has to be done before. If it's a woman, all they do is Beit Din agrees, and then they go into the mikveh, and they come out of the mikveh, and they are a Jew. So what happens with children? I did some beautiful ones back east. A black woman with 2 little kids, and the kids were aware they were not babies. They were under the age of 13. So mom gets in the bath with them. And we're going to take a bath. We're going to take a bath. I've talked to people about this. It's really better to do it before they're like 13 because they start to get all modest and worried and what does this mean and stuff. If you do it when they're still children, then they will be excited, it'd be meaningful, and they're still, so that child gets a certificate of conversion just like the adult does. The only difference, as I said, is because they're under your wing, so to speak, the child doesn't sit there and say, "Oh, I want to." Oh, yeah, you might say. I mean, not Taylor's Leo, but um, um, Josh and Mary. Josh has Leo from his first marriage, I believe. Is it Leo? Is it his or hers? I think Leo, I'm sorry, Leo might have been Mary's. And so they were raising Leo, and then they had little Joseph. So Joseph had the circumcision and the naming at the hospital. But when we did Mary's conversion ceremony and Josh's conversion ceremony, um, we also did it for Leo. So Leo was, I think he's 9 now. He was 8. Do you want to be Jewish? Yeah, it's so much fun. He would give me hugs. He's got kids, a big hugger. So an 8-year-old, it's very delicate and emotional. It's important for the child to have some connection with it. But if a younger child, like 2 or 3, Mommy's taking a bath. Let's get in the bath together. Does that answer your question, Christina? Okay, so I'll do the best I can. Um, what if they were born from? Yes, thank you. Okay, good. All right. What else did I need to cover on these topics? Oh, names. Names are really cool. And I don't have a slide for that, but I have all kinds of material that you can find in most of these books. And this has to do with you too. And I will just put it this way. This is my short version. Okay. Choose a name based on, and this is me, this is just my rubric based on um, generation, alliteration. I usually do alliteration first, and imitation. Now it sounds weird because imitation sound. What am I imitating? No, fake. No. So the alliteration is, it's easy. Moshe, Marty. No, my English name is Marty. It's easy if somebody has a name that is somehow related to or sounds like a biblical name. David is David. That's easy. Michael is Michael. Ralph is Raphael. It's so easy. So in the normal, not normal, but in a traditional situation, a child is given 2 names. We're naming him Sam, right? Right. Sam is Sam, but his Hebrew name is Shmuel. Is that right? Did I get that right? Okay, so that was easy. So and you were named for a relative, right? Okay, you can unmute. So the usual thing, there's no usual, but the most likely scenario for traditional, I want to say normative, is, parents sit down, they say, well, gee, we're going to name the kid for my grandfather. Now, Debbie's question from earlier, she's still on. Uh, but the grandfather's name was Isidore. No, we're not going to give the kid the name Isidore. So we'll call him Isaac. Isaac is close to Isidore, so Isaac becomes Yitzchak. Or they like a name, and this is where rabbis and other people get very creative. So there are several books. There is one called the Big Book of Jewish Names. There is the Baby Naming Book. There's other things in Anita Diamonds has several books. So and you can go to websites also. And there's a whole bunch of websites where you can have Hebrew names, and people find this for, Christians love it too, because you want to say, I want a biblical sounding name. Now, so often you can do all 3. Alliteration is A is Aleph, B is Bet, Gimel, G is Gimel, and so on. J, John, well, John could be, and I can tell you what they are. John was Yochanan. There were 2 brothers in the Maccabee story. There was a John and a Yochanan. So John, Jon, is Jonathan, right? Jonathan, and John John was Yochanan, right? So that in the Germans call him, Johann Sebastian Bach and so on. So there's two kinds of Johns. Anyway, in my case, my parents had no problem with it, but I chose when I was 19 to start using my Hebrew name. Now, this goes to Debbie's question. In traditional view, up until the late Middle Ages, maybe early Middle Ages, depending where, and only in Eastern Europe, it was customary to name the child in honor of the grandparent, living grandparents. So we have Gamliel the first, and then it skips a generation. There was Gamliel, I don't remember his son's name, and there was Gamliel the younger. So it was traditional to name the kid literally after their grandparent. And I found this out when I read Gabriel Garcia Marquez's book, 100 Years of Solitude, about South America. They did it in South American cultures too. So there were two people walking around, a grandfather and a grandson, both with the same name. All right. So what happened is, you can probably imagine, is the plague and other childhood diseases. So this, out of, I don't want to say superstition, but the belief was the angel of death is going to go looking for the grandfather or the grandmother. And so they chose not to do that anymore. So that is, I wouldn't say it's wrong, but it is no longer the minhag. Remember, minhag means custom among Ashkenazi European Jews. It is still the custom among most, but not all, of the Sephardic Jews. There you go. Emily's going to be doing her paper on food, but this is not food. But anyway, that's a significant difference. So I am named, so my grandfather was Morris, and his Hebrew name was Moshe. My dad's name was Max, but his Hebrew name was Mordechai. So, and Moshe, Mordechai, Moshe. Unfortunately, I didn't have a boy. I didn't have a kid. I would have loved to name a kid Mordechai. So that's how that goes. It goes similarly with the girls, but in the Sephardic world, but not always. I think what happened in my case, I have two sisters. My mom's side, they wanted to honor my mother's side, so my sisters were named after people on their side. So they went to Ashkenazic custom. But there was a grandma Esther, so my sister's name is Esther, Ellen. But that answers Debbie's question. Would it be wrong to name a kid after a living relative? I don't think it would be horrible, but it is no longer the custom. All right, so that covers generations, alliteration, similar letter. And as I say, J's become Yuds, K's or C's become Chet's or Chaf's. J's can also be, did I say Yuds? Yes. So now, what's really neat, and it's not that's the only way, but you can do all three. Imitation, boy, I say imitation, boy, I gotta watch when I get to bar mitzvahs. Imitation is another way of saying, I want to choose a name for me or for my child that echoes with something from, it could be a biblical person, it could be a tree, it could be a concept, and that's where a rabbi can help. These websites I'm talking about. So one of my Jews by choice, lovely couple, they live in Olympia, Washington now, Tina and John. John never converted. He's a lovely guy, and he's a fellow traveler. Tina is a nice name, Christina, but she wanted to be called Chesed. So she chose that name, Chesed, loving kindness. And so I still call her Chesed. She's gone back to Tina, but it's both. Now, in the prison, another member of my community chose, I mean, this was research. She said, I want to be called Zohara Bina, Zohara from Zohar last week, Kabbalah. So brilliance and discernment. So in Israel, it's very common. They went through phases. in the early days, in like the 20s and 30s, they were naming them biblical names, but then because they were anti-religious, they started naming them after trees and plants and flowers. It's like, dahlia is a great example. A dahlia is a flower. Kalanit, cactuses and things like that. Now, another thing that's common in Israel now is they name them, their name is Moshe, but nobody ever calls him Moshe. He might be called Mookie, So we got Mookie, Juki, Buki, nicknames like that. So I met some of my relatives, and there's a guy whose name was um, Dudu. I mean, you would never name a kid in America Dudu, but Dudu is short for David, so Dudu. Anyway, names are very cool. Who's got a question about names? Anybody? Because now we're going to get to the B'nai Mitzvah stuff. All right. Um, and going back up, so keep the material that I sent you for if you ever want to have a baby naming ceremony. Sorry, I sent out the death material. Next week, it's going to be hard, but we're going to cover marriages, which are beautiful and joyful, and death and funerals, which is but it's kind of important. Now, the reason I want to cover B'nai Mitzvah is not only to cover what it is, you all know that to some extent, but the coming of age, these two ceremonies, the baby and the bar mitzvah thing, the whole ceremony. How do I want to put this? Those of you who have teens or have young kids or are going to be teens, the kids no don't necessarily relate to the idea of going up on the bima in front of a bunch of strangers and doing a speech, But if they've been coming to services, let me see if I have the material. Okay, here it is. And we'll go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. What is a bar or a bat? Sam, help us out. What does bar or bat mean? Anybody? It does not mean son. Well, it's a son of, but call somebody son of Moshe or daughter of Sarah. Okay, but in this case, the bar, and let me see if I can get this up. Here we go, PowerPoint share. The bar means, or bat means one who is able to or is expected to do this. So it's Aramaic, or bat is Hebrew, but bar is ben is the modern Hebrew word. So a bar mitzvah means a person who reaches the age of having expectations to have adult responsibilities. And then a nice thing about that, better way of putting it is, instead of you're not an adult kid, you can't drive a car, you're not going to get a gun, you're not going to get drafted. And the age of majority in America or in most of the Western world is either 18 or 21. I remember when it was 21, and I looked forward to getting my driver's license when I was 16. So a kid who's 13 years old does not really know what adulthood is, but think about what it was in the Greco-Roman times. A boy was sent to go, whatever you want to call it, what is that called? Under the mentorship of somebody, going to work with a carpenter, and they went out to work. Kids worked, boys worked, girls were taught how to cook. I know that's going to sound awfully sexist, but that was the age at which children did start to have adult responsibilities. And frankly, some of our best matriarchs and patriarchs, people just got married at a younger age then. So, and that's when puberty starts, obviously. So when puberty starts, there you go. When puberty starts, that's when they said that's when your adult responsibilities start. They said that it was 13 for a boy or 12 and a half for a girl. I would think it could be even earlier. Okay. Um, so at what stage of our development as a people did this come to happen? It really probably began to be a ceremony in around the 12th, 13, remember, easy word to remember, 13th century in Europe. Because probably what they would used to do was, a bunch of guys are getting together at Hillel's house in the Greco-Roman times, and they bring the son with them, or they bring the daughter with them. All right, so it did not begin to have a separate kind of event until, like I said, after the temple was already destroyed. I don't know when the first Elvis impersonators started showing up, or the bands. I'm joking. And by the way, speaking of bands, I had a bar mitzvah band. I led two or three, one in LA, one in Philly. Um, and it was a big deal. But you know what was even bigger? Weddings. So I object to the idea that the kid, you have to have such a big deal for the bar mitzvah. Wait till the wedding, But a lot of people will spend a lot of money in America on the bar mitzvah. Look at some of the movies that we have. All right, so um, mitzvah, means commandment. So bar mitzvah means one upon whom the mitzvot are incumbent. Bat mitzvah, one who is expected to do these things. So what do they do? Again, just getting maybe a little bit humorous in Aborigine societies, or in let's say the Amazon or Africa, maybe not today, but they send the kids out to go kill a lion. Well, we're not going to go kill a lion, but instead there's a certain amount of trial. I know people, and I was part of this too. The men's community in the 90s began to say, and girls too, it's not, what is this? It's a joke. Okay, learn these prayers and do this thing. So there were women who said, let's have a gathering of women to talk to the girls about not just about menstruation, but about sex, but also about growing up, becoming a woman, and then go around the circle. Women would talk, maybe a grandmother talk about their life. So these kids have a role model. The men were doing the same thing, except what we added is a little bit of the 90s thing, going, I know people who will do like field trips, go on kind of a camping trip with kids. So in Israel, this happens naturally. I'm not talking about the bar bat mitzvah; it's still in the ceremony in the synagogue. But we don't have. There's something missing in American culture, unless you want to send the kid to military school. Um, so what some people started doing was bringing back some of that male mentorship with boys. Now, I don't know what it will look like when we develop, and there are people developing ceremonies that are non-gendered, because not all boys want to be boys, and not all girls are going to stay girls. That's another subject. But these are the basics. They lead the community in prayer as much as they can. They chant the Torah directly from the Torah scroll and the Haftarah. That's the prophetic book. And they deliver a Devar Torah. They do a talk or speech. I'm going to show you one of those in just a minute if I got enough time. And they receive for the first time their talit and their tefillin. Now, just so you know, this is really lovely. In the Orthodox world, or in Israel, even not among Orthodox, they will do the ceremony not on a Shabbat. They will do it on a Monday or a Thursday, and they'll go to the Western Wall, and it's done there. It is people drive, because they got to drive to Jerusalem. And so you could go to the Western Wall on any given Monday or Thursday, and you might see a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah. Now, do you guys know what the Women of the Wall is? The Women of the Wall, or other groups, there's many groups now. There are women who meet on the women's side of the wall and conduct a full service with the Torah. And of course, some of the Hasidic men are on the other side yelling, hey, or blowing whistles. But it's a beautiful ceremony that there's a girl receiving her blessing from other women, or a boy with the men. So in Israel, like I said, it's often not on a Shabbat. In America also, it will be sometimes done on a weekday. And in the Orthodox world, that's when the kid gets their first pair of tefillin to wrap tefillin. Okay, 13. This is interesting. I'm not going to read it all, but adolescence is an interesting time. This is when we begin to see glimpses of the person. So what I will often say, I'm going to get to this in a minute. When I would say to a child, I mean, they're a child, but they're not, I haven't been a father, but I've watched this happen. This kid is um, developing a sense of responsibility, even if they have learning disabilities, or they don't really relate to the Jewish ritual parts of it. They relate to the idea of showing off, frankly. So I'll share with you in a minute two speeches, or I think several speeches of kids. But just for a moment here, um, options for Jewish education. And please don't get me started on our synagogue. We need to have a religious school. Many people today, not only Orthodox, will send their children to a Jewish day school, but these days, a Jewish preschool is really fun. Here's a guy, I think I may have been at his synagogue. This is might be Pasadena, because I know that guitar. I think I met him once, but maybe not. Anyway, so preschool is really fun. I taught in different day schools in LA, and in the beginning, maybe only the Orthodox sent their kids to day schools. Then busing came in, and people said, "Oh, I got take my kid." Today, a lot of people, even in Denver, send their kids to day schools. They're not only Orthodox kids, and it's a great way to get a sense of Jewish identity. And then maybe, so a lot of people I know would send the kid to a day school until they were about 12, 13, 14, have their bar mitzvah, and then they go to a public school so that they get both the integration. Okay. Um, let's not read that stuff right now. That's philosophy. All right, but there's more on education. Another thing, I'll just say this again. I'm talking about me, but I'm not doing it to talk about me. I'm talking about you. If you want your child, this is for Christina or anybody else, if you want your child to have a Jewish identity, guess what? You don't have to send them to a religious school. I mean, you can. Summer camp will do it. A good summer camp experience. See those kids? That's obviously a reform camp from the look of it. I mean, I don't know that camp. Um, um, the programs that go to Israel after high school, college. So, all right. Excuse me. So I want to show you, share with you. These are I sent to you to. Um, B'nai Mitzvah, okay, two B'nai Mitzvah speeches. There's one, and there's, oh, is this the same one? Okay, click to open. Come on, open. There we go. And there's the other one. What is a speech? What is a Devar Torah? It does not have to be one of the synagogues I'm flying to in Portland. I watched online, their kid, one of the kids. Oh, this is the same one. Two B'nai Mitzvah speeches. Yes, it's the same one. So I just saved these for your edification. So one of the B'nai Mitzvah I did in LA for that same community would, believe it or not, three kids, three triplets, Nirit, I forget the other. Oh, Oren, a boy, and Rotem. They're all grown up now. Rotem actually moved to Israel. The parents are Israeli, and they had triplets. Can you imagine doing a bat mitzvah, b'nai mitzvah for three children, and each one had to do their own individual thing. So we fit it all in. It was not a long day. And then we split up who did what readings, who did what prayers. And Nirit, I think, um, did this really beautiful. Nirit, of the three of them, was maybe the most academic of the three. Oren was also a very smart boy, but he was a little less motivated. Um, but the one thing I want to say is, like I said before, did I hit the share screen? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there we go. What I want to say about a kid is that um, you learn again. I didn't have my own children, but I've worked with kids. I had privates and then synagogues, in synagogues, out of synagogues. When I was in Philadelphia, after I think still in my last year of rabbinical school, I had I think it was a single father, and he wanted his son to have his bar mitzvah, and the kid was a good boy. He was smart, went to a good school, but it was hard for him to get motivated about the whole ceremony. But so then we started talking, and I'm a good psychologist. I'm getting to know this kid. He loved um, baseball, and he loved his bicycle. So he made his whole speech about how putting together his service was like putting up together his bicycle. It was beautiful. Um, Now, Annabelle Gurwitch, and they happen to be divorced now, unfortunately. Annabelle used to be, she was a screenwriter in LA. It was a very Hollywood bar mitzvah. I'm telling you, it was at the school where the kid went. It was a Catholic school or whatever, but it was a good school. And we rented the space, and I'm looking out at the audience, and at least 4 movie stars were in the audience. Okay. So Annabelle and her husband asked me to tutor the kid, and he did his parsha. His parsha was Kedoshim. So read what he writes here. He says, "My parsha is Ezra. My parsha is sometimes referred to as the other 10 commandments." And he was into, cross learning cross religions. So every religion has the love your neighbor as yourself. So he talked about that. So Ezra, did his own research, and he did a very good job, and it was a beautiful ceremony. So what you will find is just like everything else. If you went to a conservative synagogue, it would be a conservative style service. The children, the boys, the girls are expected to lead, if not all the service, just a large bulk of the service. They lead uh, prayers going from maybe the Baruch Hu through the Amidah. Then they might, in some places, they actually chant all 7 aliyot in the Torah reading, or at least they chant theirs. So it's a skill, So they're showing their skills. But what I wanted to share with you is then at some point in the service, I will. A lot of rabbis do this. We have a moment when what time we got? Oh, we've got plenty of time. There a moment when just like the naming ceremony with the baby, there's a moment when the child is blessed, and I will call up the parents and the sisterhood chair or the president of the synagogue, sometimes a grandparent, and then me. And I will each give a blessing to this child, this young man or young woman. And what I've said to them, I've said many different things, but sometimes I'll just say, I can see you, imagine this is like a lion, cub coming out, or a bear cub. You're not yet formed, and then I'll ask them in my private sessions, what do you think you want to do with your life? And sometimes they know. Sometimes they say, "Oh, I'm very obvious. I'm going to be a scientist, or I'm going to be I'm a musician." Oh, I was sad. I mean, I was terribly sad. Dave, if he's still online, the one bar mitzvah I got to do here in town was the bar mitzvah of our of Simon Wolf. And Simon plays incredible cello. He has a cellist, he has a teacher, and I wanted him to play his cello so bad. He didn't want to. So it would have been nice. I've had other ceremonies where the kid will, now they don't come in their baseball uniform or something, but they'll talk about their other hobbies. It's not only the Jewish part. Is that making sense? They're rounded, the whole person. Because remember, the baby at a Brit Milah or a baby girl baby naming ceremony, they're unformed. We're just talking about these are our wishes for you. When they're time they're 12 or 13, we're beginning to see glimpses. So another one I did was a boy and a girl. And a lot of times these days they do they were twins. A lot of times families like to do a destination bar mitzvah. So the family flew to Maui. We rehearsed, we practiced here this was in LA, and then we flew to Maui, rented a synagogue there, and they had the ceremony there. And it was a beautiful ceremony. Now, last thing I'll comment on, we don't do this. This is not so common, but have any of you ever been to a really ritzy, um, uh, inappropriate ceremony for B'nai Mitzvah? No? Thank God. How about you, Sam? Any?
What do you mean inappropriate?
I mean, inappropriate. I mean, too glitzy, rich, overdone. Yes?
Oh
No?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So, I mean, it is appropriate to have a band or have a DJ. The boys and the girls are dancing for their first time. It's kind of, I remember, and this is also a little bit of a plug here. Back in my day, that would be the first time that they would have an open bar, and we were allowed to drink. And so we found out, this is many years later, that's how some Jewish kids became alcoholic. I mean, not alcohol, the first exposure to this forbidden fruit of having a drink, because they would go to the bartender, who usually was hired help. They didn't know any better. Can I have another? Can I have another? Can I have a Shirley Temple? With a little of this, a little of that, and kids would get sloshed. It was really sick. But for the most part, what I remember from the day and today too is the band. They DJs will come up and they'll do like dances with the kids and games. So nowadays, kids have become developmentally, if anything, they're below where we were in the '60s. They are not ready to actually start pairing off. And neither were we, frankly. All right. So, as a humorous note, I was the associate rabbi at Temple Israel of Long Beach, and this is not a pleasant story. It's funny because it's like a movie. Adam was the one child of divorced parents who both went on to make millions or a million each in the import-export business. But she went on to her business and he went on to his business. They got along, but when it came to the bar mitzvah, they competed to show how much they loved Adam. So, and the rabbi, the chief rabbi, decided to take a sabbatical that year in January. So I did the bar mitzvahs, the one bar mitzvah I got to do at that synagogue. So me and the bar mitzvah. So the ceremony was nice. It was lovely. It was normal. I got in the mail an invitation. I might still have it around that looked like this. It came like a CD wrapper, and inside was a complete CD from one of the well-known rappers. I can't remember his name. He's still around. It might have been one of those guys that was, recently charged with some crimes. So I opened up the CD. I put it in my CD player, and it was a complete song. Don't you want to come party with me at Adam's bar mitzvah? I mean, they went to the studio and they did an invitation on a CD. All right, so that was the CD. So they said, please, Rabbi, come. I had a girlfriend at the time, Amy. So we went to the Beverly Hills Hotel. The Beverly Hilton is next door, the Beverly Hills Hotel on Sunset Boulevard, I think, or is it Santa Monica Boulevard? We got there and there were parking attendants, and they were having the Oscars in a room down the hall. So what they did, because they heard that, as they made little statues, and they call it the Adams. And every table had a statue of a little Adam, just like to make believe we were at the Oscars. We were greeted, I kid you not, by Humphrey Bogart, Adam Sandler, not real ones, but celebrity imitations. Then it came time for the mid ceremony, and the Laker cheerleaders got up, and it was the real Laker cheerleaders. So they must have spent $100,000 at this bar mitzvah, and it still goes in my mind as the most, inappropriate but hilarious. So, all right. Weddings are beautiful, and I think that this is what a wedding should be like. But a bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah should not be, as big a deal. However, there is one thing that I think is appropriate for bar bat mitzvah. And what do you think it is? Picking the kid up in a chair. I think it's a very appropriate to have a hora, the Hava Nagila or some other music, and put the kid in a chair and lift them on your shoulders, because that's the one time they get to be the star of the show. So, all right. I'm open for questions. I'll shut off. Oh, that we still have the screen on. Okay. All right, guys. Questions, comments. Particularly for those of you who will go this journey, when you get to the point in your life when you have a child of that age, it will be meaningful to you to have this coming of age ceremony, and don't be afraid to tailor it to your own needs, just like the weddings too. Comments, questions? What time we got? Oh, we're just on time. All right. Well, next week, Debbie, anything? Okay. Next week, we'll do weddings. Perhaps I'll be able to show you a video of a wedding. I have some really wonderful memories of those. I didn't want to say that it's wrong to drink. It's appropriate to drink in the right context. A Russian wedding. There is nothing as wild as a Russian wedding. I'll tell you more about it next week. You can have fun without drinking, but Russians know how to do it, and they have this thing. I'll give it away. You know how you do a toast? So they bang on the glasses, like this is the glass. They bang on the glasses like this. But instead of just saying, that's a signal the bride and groom have to kiss. But in Russian weddings, they say gorke, gorke. Gorky pickles are bitter pickles. So gorke, bitter means make out. So I was at this one Russian wedding, and every 5 minutes, some of the groom's friends would break out gorke, and they had to stop everything, and the bride and groom had to kiss. It was really cool. All right. Thank you, guys. Good night.
Hey, Rabbi, there's a question in the chat.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good. I didn't see that. Okay. Oh, question in chat. Okay. Yes, of course. Yes, sir. I didn't talk about that. Yes, I thought I made it clear, but I didn't. I implied it. A bar or bat mitzvah means I accept upon myself the responsibilities as an adult. So a lot of girls didn't have them. My sister had hers at age 45 back in Cleveland. And usually, not always, but usually it's a group thing. I mean, only because it's like 6 people, 5 people, 10 people, and each one gets a little piece of the Torah portion, 4 men, 6 women, but it can also just be a one woman. Back in that same congregation that I led in Long Beach, a one woman who became my partner in the group, my co-visionary Ariella. We had a beautiful ceremony where all the women blessed her and stuff. So yes, it is a very beautiful. It's more meaningful in some ways as an adult. So yeah, yes, Devin, you can you have your conversion, and then fly me back for your bar mitzvah. But the same general idea. You lead a part of the service. You do need to learn the Hebrew. You do need to learn how to chant the Torah portion, but there's ways to get around some of that, So it means that it's a little different. I might have a copy of some of the material from an adult bar mitzvah because it's different than you're not a little kid. That's a cool question. How would you envision your own bar mitzvah? Yeah, interesting, huh? Um, and also you could invite your own friends to bless you, which is really cool. I'll see if I have some of those on file, and they can be a lot more creative. They can be in the synagogue. They could also be outdoors. Yeah, very cool. Thank you for asking that. Rick, you got a question? Anybody else? Sam, Emily? All right. Oh, I am going to send you guys, I didn't want to overdo it. I'm going to send you all and the other people who didn't make it today, a kind of a midterm, I call it an exam, but it's from the Intro to Judaism program. And also then I'll send you the answers. They're all basic questions that you can either find or that we've discussed or some new, or maybe I didn't cover, and it'll give you something to chew on. So I'll send that like tomorrow. All right. Thank you guys. Good night.
Night.
Good night.
I love you all. Oh, Dave's back. Okay.
Good night.
Thank you, Dave. Bye-bye.